again, for the first time in a long time, we're going to watch an SCL on stream. Because it's not a game dev one. That doesn't provide any value in terms of what's coming, what's happening, what is getting fixed, how we're working on things. Excited about this. Here we go.
Sit up straight.
And it's never
Sit up
the
straight.
right
It's pre-recorded.
screen.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Not So Live, the Invictus All Vehicles Q&A. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And yes, once per blue moon, the show is pre-recorded with holidays in Germany this week, and then the Memorial Day for next week for the U.S., and then the Queen's Jubilee, and some other bank holiday that's also happening next week.
Do people care if this is recorded live or not? Like, I feel like he's like defending it not being live. Who cares? Like, I don't give a shit. I think they get like decent views on Twitch when they do this, like about 1,000 viewers, right? Like that's pretty good. But I don't know how and I don't know if they like simulcast stream on YouTube or anything. But oh yeah, you know what? I guess they get questions from the live chat
Week.
So I forgot about that part. It's kind of important to let people know that hey, it's pre-recorded. We won't be getting any questions from the live chat.
The schedules are all funky, so we are pre-recording the show with our good friends John and Rich. How you doing, John and Rich?
Hello, I'm good.
Yeah. Rich is one of my favorite people, I think. His Twitter account is very, very cool. He's really into racing. He goes to like racing events and takes pictures and stuff. It's awesome.
That's a nice high vis you've got there.
I wasn't even in the new office today. I just wear it because I like it.
It looks great. It suits you.
Yeah. It's well, we had a little snafu with the color correction. I don't know if it's going to get fixed in time, but in the current version of ISC before it goes live, this looks red, and I wanted people to know it is not red. It is hot pink.
It does look red in that thing. It was very disappointing.
Well, hopefully it gets fixed by the time the episode airs. All right. So also I can see myself in your reflection there. Look at that. Oh wait, why did it disappear there? Oh, I can see it in Rich's. Sorry, I can see it in Rich's. All right. So I can see me and your screen and Rich's screen. All right.
Wait, they're in the same room.
Invictus is going on right now, and as we do every year, we open things up to an all vehicles Q&A, which we are doing on today's show. A couple caveats. Remember that the game is still currently in development. So, there won't be an answer for every single thing you can possibly know, because part of development is figuring that stuff out. Yes, trolls, even 10 years in. 2, there is a major focus on Squadron 4.
Are we trolls if we make fun of the fact that this game has been in development for 10 fucking years? Is that actually trolling? Like it was the plan from the very beginning, Jared, for this to last for fucking 10 years.
42 at the moment. So a lot of the combat and ship systems and everything that are being focused on at the moment are
I don't think
those
that's
that are
fair at
expressly
all,
needed
dude.
for Squadron 42. So adjust your expectations accordingly. And 3,
yeah, I feel like I've
we are
been
going to be
getting trolled.
We're going to attempt to focus mostly on flight-ready vehicles today, since Invictus and the Free Fly is all about the ships that are currently available in the game. So too will be our focus for the show. All right, so starting things off, the very first, the most top voted on question. This happens every single time we do this, without fail. What is the current status of physicalized armor and damage and components?
Cool. So they always get lumped together in one thing, but they are somewhat independent systems. So physicalized damage, that is still being worked on. Physics guys are still working on it. They've got a few more test cases, found a few more issues. They are looking at some smaller scale problems to solve, like rather than going full ham straight on a spaceship. They're trying to solve a lot of these questions on smaller, like environmental assets, because if you can solve it on that, it's much easier to then scale it up for a spaceship.
What are those questions? That's like what are the things they're trying to figure out? I'm just curious. I don't think he really needs to tell us, but I'm curious.
So they're still working on that. The VFX team are quite heavily involved in doing a lot of tests, like simulations, for the whole breakability side of it, rather than just nice clean breaks, but having a bit of crumpling. I know I said VFX. People think like, oh, it's just particle. It's not. They do a lot more than just particle work. There's a lot of like mesh simulation that has knowledge within that team. So deformation and twisting and bending of assets. That's with those guys. Physicalized armor is like a byproduct of the damage system, so that will come with that. Physical components is sort of independent to that.
And I think
because we can do physicalized components without the physical damage side. So we are looking in the very near future to start going through some of our ships and putting those components in the right places. Like if you look at our newer ships, say multi-crew ones with interiors, Star Runner, Star Lifter, you will have seen all the hatches and you open them up, the components are actually there. So for new ships, that's built in. We're looking at going back to the older ships and updating those. It's obviously a lot of work there. So it's a balancing act between updating the older ones and delivering newer ones. But we are putting more of a focus onto going back to those.
I would question and I don't even remember hearing about this, but I would question I understand going back and updating your older ships is going to take a very long time. Is that a clear blocker for you to release physicalized components on, like, do they need to do every ship before they release physicalized components, or could they release it on certain ships, see how it works, and make decisions later? I feel like they probably have to go through every ship, right? It would be weird to have a system where some ships blew up and others didn't, right? Like, you would just never use the ships that blew up anymore. So they're kind of in a really crappy spot for that one. And that's, again, another example of why this live development environment doesn't work, but there are hundreds of examples of why it does and hundreds of examples why it doesn't. And it's, I don't know. I think it's still a big debate of whether or not this works or not, but I think this is a big problem.
Those older ships and updating them, because we do need those ships to have the items in the right place, to have the resource network, which is the thing we've shown in the past with all the nodes and the links, and I'm sure we'll see more of that in the coming months on ISC as that progresses. But yeah, that side is in progress. That's going to be a slow burn for many, many months. And you might see in coming patches ship interiors changing a little, but not see any like gameplay side of that. That's all the prep work for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worth noting, not to bury the lead there, that dependencies are at the core of all of these things. We're here with the vehicle content and feature team, the design team stuff, but most of that question is mostly work for other gameplay teams, other design teams, other effects teams, and stuff that then need to get integrated into the vehicles and stuff like this. And you are right, we will see more of the resource management stuff in Q3 of this year, probably towards the end of Q3, maybe even the beginning of Q4. Yeah. So, what's the plan for medium fighters that aren't competitive and are food for light fighters?
This is like going to be a lot of like I think kind of deeper real like questions for people who are really into combat. I'm a little I would say more than a little not versed in this kind of stuff. I want to ask the question to Twitch chat. Why do medium fighters, why are they food for light fighters? I would assume it's just that they have like similar DPS capabilities, but they lack the maneuverability. And maneuverability seems to be king at the moment because we're flying so fast, but I don't know. And yeah, they're just like not tanky enough, right? So like there's heavy fighters that can do things, and then there's light fighters, but medium fighters, and I think a lot of the medium fighters we all love, saber pilots, Hornet pilots. I don't know what else would be considered a medium fighter, but those two in particular, some of the old school people, you know, those are some of our first ships, or, you know, our first combat ship or whatever that we really wanted. I feel like the Hornet has not been good for many years, you know?
Yes. So obviously we've learned a lot with the rebalance that we did with the, you know, light fighters, medium fighters, heavy fighters, and we're still kind of finding out what really makes a fighter stronger against another ship, especially when it comes to size, and especially when it comes to the addition of a turret on that ship. So we have been working on some of that balance in the background. We've been doing various tests ourselves to kind of figure it out, because we basically need to figure out why the Hurricane, for example, is actually quite strong, but it's probably a little bit too strong. Whereas we've just released a Scorpius, for example, and that ship, even though it's quite a good ship stat-wise, it's kind of not as being effective maybe as we thought originally, compared to the stats it has. So we're still figuring out why this is the case, but also we're looking to move the combat speeds down, and this will really help bring in both the maneuverability of the ship and also the speed of the turret. So once we bring down the speed of the ships, those other two factors will become much more important in terms of combat strength. So that's probably when our next step will come with these ships.
Okay.
It's very hard because to listen to you, because I can see you talking, but then I can see you talking on John's screen behind you. It's like there's a big.
Why? He just like says like the most monumental thing, and Jared's like, I see my big pink vest that if I wasn't wearing, I wouldn't be distracting myself. Like, what? After like him saying something really, really monumental for something really, I think, important in the combat meta in the game. But okay. The thing that I get from there is we're like, we really aren't sure why medium fighters are so bad, but we don't think addressing why they're not bad in the current way things work makes any sense, because maybe when we slow the speeds down, they will become better, It's Arrow, Gladius, or Lose at the moment. Like, not even Vanguard anymore, Virgil?
Rich and a little Rich right behind you. It's very distracting. Any recent work done on ship and vehicle tractor beams?
Or Hurricane?
Yep. So we have a few ships in the pipeline that make use of them. The work done for the handheld tractor beam is probably 70% copy and paste into the vehicle ones. There's obviously some number twiddling behind the scenes in terms of the force and mass,
beams,
and the VFX team want to upgrade the visuals of it, because obviously it's a very thin, spindly FPS one versus one that you would find on a larger ship, and it sort of works out the box in the use cases we have. It is of limited use right now. Will be more use with the cargo factor when you've got physical crates to load and unload, so that's why you don't really see it. And there is some UX that we want to improve, because on the FPS one you have all your information on the back of the multi-tool. Tells you your force limits, everything. That is all getting transplanted to the remote view on the turrets, or if you're in a manned turret, having it on the turret HUD planes. Because whilst right now I could jump in game and use a tractor beam turret on certain ships, I have to know what all the buttons do and all the limitations because it's not being presented to me, so it's not ready for player release. And then towards the end of the year, we're going to be doing some work because at the moment vehicles are just simply hard-coded to not work with it because there are some quite interesting technical problems to do with IFCS and tractor beams. IFCS is basically built on the assumption that one person is controlling the flight of the vehicle, and that becomes not true when people are grabbing it with a tractor beam. So we've got we know what we want to do with it. We just need to do that because that's what everybody wants to do with tractor beams.
No argument from me. Let's see. It's
not even what everybody wants to do with tractor beams. It's like you literally made a ship that does that, first off. And then second, I don't think it's what everyone wants to do necessarily. I think it's like the most important thing. As far as a game-wide use case for it, because salvagers, if something's spinning, they're going to want to slow it down and stop it. Miners maybe can use it for grabbing rock pieces, things like that, keeping them from moving too far away, and obviously like repair and rearm and things like that, bringing a ship that's disabled towards you to get fixed. So yeah, I think that's like kind of the use case for it, and I think most people maybe or think that like the only use case for it would be to just like move boxes around on a cargo ship, but it actually has like a lot more use cases than that. So okay, like initially when you started the conversation, I thought we were gonna get it a lot earlier, and now it sounds like this is not coming anytime soon.
Overall balance pass that was started last year. I thought we were going to see more work done on that in 3.17, but it hasn't seen any significant progress since.
Okay, and pausing again. I'm sorry, I'm pausing a lot, but this is a really good question, and Jared's like giving us the stare right now. I'm glad he asked this one, and I'm glad they weren't afraid to ask it, because it is a little aggressive of a question, right? Like, hey, you posted all this stuff. You did a combat summit at the beginning of the year. It's May. Where are the changes? The only thing you've done is like make missiles be a little different, right? Like there has not been that level of pace of development that we would have thought would have come with this this team this year. Since they kind of brought everything to these baseline levels, like not much has happened yet.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. So we basically moved the game as far as we could at the time with the resources we had to a point where we could move forward with the game. This meant bringing all the light fighters in sync and all the items in sync and the weapon balance and doing a complete pass on almost every single item, every single weapon in the game. Almost every single ship was retuned. And that's put us in a really good place to move forward. And since then, we've been working out how do we do our next steps. And we're working on a couple of features in the background that will enable us to bring the combat speeds down. And this is where the next step comes, which is the combat speed. So once we get the combat speeds down to a reasonable amount, we're going to be able to really push forward on making ships more unique. So even ships that are kind of similar in size and similar in weight, there's still kind of unique properties to those ships that make them what they are. And we're going to be able to move those ships much more accurately and precisely within the kind of bubble that those ships operate in. But
what happens to
we just decided to work on these features first because there's no point doing small iterations, because that'll stop us from doing the big iteration, which will keep delaying the combat speeds from being moved down to the right speeds. So this is kind of the quickest way for us to move forward and get the combat speeds down.
And now we've discussed this several times, but we're in a period of growth with Star Citizen. We got a whole bunch of new people here that have never had this conversation before, and we can't expect them to go back and rewatch the old videos and stuff. Why are we trying to move the speeds down? It seems counterintuitive to something on the outside. Don't we want things to be faster and more intense, in the words of George Lucas?
Yes, so it basically works up to a certain point. So in combat, there's a thing we call combat geometry, and it's how ships interact with each other. It's basically how ships interact, and at a certain speed, this falls apart, and it becomes basically a nose-on-nose fight. As you go towards each other, you just fly by each other,
Jousting.
and then jousting. Then basically, by the time you've looked around, you're 2 or 3 kilometers away from each other again, and it's repeat. So what we want to do is we want to bring that combat closer, and you have to slow things down. So this, so it works on a much closer distance, and then we can work on a much more accurate kind of weapon system for different velocities of weapons, so the weapons can have the strengths.
So just so you know, they've done this in the past. So we used to have like ship combat speed. I think it was called SCM speed. I think we still have SCM technically. And then they had cruise mode. You would press a button and you would just go into cruise mode. I think they're going to start going back to that, but the game is so big and we have to fly so far in so many other situations that this is an incredible balancing act to try to figure out the best way to do it. So yeah, maybe I understand why it's taking so long. And by the way, I did watch this before the stream, but this is the first time. This is where I stopped. Was right around here because I was watching a Formula One free practice, or I was listening in the car on the way home, and then I put this on my way home. But I was almost home by that point. So.
Missiles become more effective outside of these ranges, so you can cover there. And it just allows us to kind of control what the combat looks like and make it much more interesting. That it's much more about, the geometry and kind of trying to get an edge on your opponent. Mm-hmm. And then once you get that edge on your opponent, being able to accurately kind of, win against them. But it's a challenge to kind of get there. And bringing the speeds down just allows us to keep the distances close. And then you can kind of use the different ships we have in the game for the actual different purposes they have, rather than just being this. Everything goes quickly by each other all the time, and basically you're shooting at a very small point. It allows us to kind of allow people to get edge on, so you can get an edge on your opponent, and then you can face them, and then you've got a full face ship to shoot at, which we didn't really have before. So it's about moving the game towards that style of combat and allowing all the systems we have and all the weapon types we have to kind of make a difference and matter. Because at the high speeds, everything just becomes high speed to that point, and the differences don't matter as much.
I think you explained that really well.
It's something we've been working on behind the scenes for quite a few months, and I don't think we've really we're going to probably say quite a few times today, bringing the speeds down, but we're not going to explain how we're doing that here, because we could spend like a whole hour or a whole separate ISC talking about what we're going to do. So we'll save that for another time, but. Yeah, the goal is to have.
I guess since this is Invictus all vehicles Q&A, yeah, maybe it's not the time, but man, I don't know about you. I don't give a shit about some Invictus ships you're trying to sell. I personally want to hear about this in particular, because this is the most monumental change that is coming to ship combat ever. Why wouldn't we talk about this? If you know what you're doing and you've been working on it for 3 to 6 months, I want to hear it. So Jared, I hope he schedules something like really soon for this, because yeah, this is important. Like, this is something we need to hear about. Like, game dev SCLs gotta get, like, this has to be prioritized above that. But I don't know if they're ready to talk about it yet, because we don't know where they are in the stage of R&D. Okay, we came up with the solution that we're going with, and now we have to make it. So maybe we're a little far away from that. But whenever they're out of the, trying to figure out how they want to do it, we got to hear about it, man. We got to hear about this.
Those slower combat speeds, because that improves combat. But then we've got another plan for not crippling traversal around the universe, because we're not just going to go, ships are only going to go 300 meters a second now, bam, tough. We are aware that like combat is just one aspect of the game. There's a whole lot of traversal that needs to not be hindered by that. So
yep.
we'll talk about it more in depth another time.
I was literally just making myself a note here that I have to follow up on that.
Oh, look at it. Yeah, follow up. Please, Jared. Please.
And vehicle stealth see some love in the future.
Vehicle stealth.
So we've already kind of sneaked in a couple of changes with a couple of the stealth ships we have in the game right now, which lowers their signals a little bit. But we do have a plan to kind of make stealth and basically the entire radar, system kind of matter in terms of those ships. But again, we're kind of in this point where our focus is the combat speeds, but also the reason why that's holding things back in terms of stealth is because once we get to these new features, it requires a complete rebalance of all the items in the game, and it's the items that define the stealth aspect. So we kind of need to get to this point first, and then once we get to that point, we can start looking at what makes stealth ships, and how do we bring the signals of those ships down with and then what downsides do those components have without really taking away from the purpose of those ships.
I'm confused.
But yeah, we've got to get to that point first
because we
start, balance.
We literally had a patch where ships were like certain stealthy ships were stealthy. If you used stealth components, they were really effective
in the game towards those things.
Okay. Another question I think is probably going to come down to the combat speeds. It's hard to justify not piloting another ship over a turret with the balance decisions. What will be the value in picking a multi-crew ship over multiple single fighters?
Yeah, you're pretty much right that this comes again down to the speeds. So with the unlimited speeds, obviously with a turret, you're limited by the speeds of the turrets, but once we slow everything down, does the basic speed of the ship and the speed of the turret will become a much more determining factor in that combat success of that ship.
Yeah, imagine unloading 100 rounds and never missing on somebody.
Well. We're still not, we haven't really, the game isn't final. We're still working on this. And, as I said before, we're still in a situation where some ships that do have a turret are much more powerful than others. And we're still working out what that means. Is it the turret speed? Is it the weapons you attach to those turrets? And, stuff like, is it just a ship that it's on?
Yeah, the changes we did a few patches ago to introduce capacitors did do quite a marked shift away from this whole let me bring two ships instead of one with a multi-crew. If you go look at the analytics, which are not the be-all and end-all of balance decisions, they're just part of what informs changes. Those ships that have turrets went from being well below the fighters in all the applicable metrics to being at the top end. So even now in combat, they are becoming more strong. And in the future.
So I see a comment in Twitch chat about like sweaty try-hard PvPers, right? And most people aren't them. Yes, that's true. Like in the current game, dude, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter for our average player, but letter from the chairman comes out and persistence is coming. It's the biggest part of server meshing, blah, blah, blah. Whether we believe it or not, because again, it's kind of hard to believe until we see it. It definitely sounds like the future of Star Citizen may have more players per server, which means we may have more interactions with other players. And that's why I think most people don't care about PvP, but having a general understanding of what's good to do, what's good to fly, what's good to add to your ship component-wise, and having a general understanding of it is going to be more of a necessity sooner than later than it ever has before. And I would leave it at that. Like the super sweaty guys, like, I don't think I'll ever be one of them, but I definitely think that it's valuable to have a general understanding of how to defend yourself to be better than the average, at least. So you don't have a bad time, right? You're not gonna beat the best, but you don't want to have a bad time, right? So all this stuff does really matter, even if you're just like a cargo hauler.
Future, and to now to a lesser extent, the simple cost and maintenance of running multiple ships will be a factor that people have to pay attention to. It's going to be much more.
Bro, we've been hearing that for years,
more time
John.
and fuel and insurance and cost efficient to all pile into one ship.
The cost.
To get to places, and we want to, especially with things like Pyro coming online.
The cost of running 2 ships.
Getting those smaller ships to one location is going to be quite a chore versus you all pile into one with a larger quantum drive that can do the jumps quicker, that can get there quicker. That sort of time sink aspect of it will become more important, which is perhaps less clear in the current game, where everyone, even though quantuming from like, if one of you spawns at Microtech and one of you spawns at Hurston, that's a good chunk of time to meet up. That's only going to get longer in the future. So being in a single place, in a single ship, will just get that experience happening quicker.
Happy Drake Day
for you.
I imagine changes to physicalized damage, the resource management system, and everything will also go a long way towards making multi-crew ships more viable.
Yes. Yeah, because at the moment, if you're in a turret gun and like, oh, I'm not doing anything for all the time, I'm not in combat, whereas there will be things to do outside of combat for those additional crew members. So it's, I get the aspect of, well, if we're both in 2 single seaters, we're both doing something all the time right now. That's true now. That's going to be true.
But I don't think the question really was asking that. I think the question, I guess they answered the question. They think that the speeds will help it, but yeah.
In the future, in a multi-crew
just
ship.
get a C2, man.
It can be
most amount of cargo is the best advantage right now.
It can be frustrating to run a live environment in the middle of game development. It's the combat and vehicle experience in Star Citizen today is not what the combat and vehicle experience of Star Citizen will be tomorrow. And there's still valuable testing and stuff. There's still reason to have the live environment. I mean, the testing and the input that we get from the backers has proven itself out over the last 10 years, more times than we need to discuss right now. But it can still be frustrating for players and for developers alike to be there and to know that this experience that there is today is not the experience that it will be tomorrow, both for good and for bad. Some things are easier today and they will get more difficult tomorrow, but things that are difficult today, like making a multi-crew ship seem viable, will become easier in the future. So it's I don't know, I put my fan hat on for a second. I feel that frustration sometimes. So
yeah, and we were talking before this, and that
I'm just playing, Jared, but
we're thinking about how we were going to answer some of the questions, and we realised that the answers that we've got here. Wait, these changes we've alluded to, we haven't actually talked about externally, even though we've been working on them for 6 to 9 months. We're like, oh, so we need to. Like in our heads, we know where it is now internally, which is a vastly different experience to the current live build. So it's this big time delay that we have to wrap our heads around.
Because many of the flight changes and everything are now currently going into Squadron before they make their way to
what?
Universe. So yeah,
how does that make any sense? Okay, I get from
what are the plans to differentiate shield types?
Hold on. I get from like literally every other experience that makes sense, but why would why would they not be going to us first and then Squadron? Like in this use case for 2 things, I think there's just 2 things that should come to the PU first and then go to Squadron, and that is the FPS experience and the flight experience. Those are the only 2 things that we are a major tool to use to make Squadron better. Right? I'm actually kind of What? Okay. Yeah, I don't understand. I think that needs like way maybe different explanations, because I don't know, maybe it's just UI and things like that are going there, but that sounds completely fucking backwards.
Grades and manufacturers.
I'll go back, and this was a question about shields.
Okay. What are the plans to differentiate shield types, grades, and manufacturers?
Yeah, so you know, we've got the base kind of tunings right now, and we're still kind of settling on where the base tuning of the shields lines up and everything, and the grades of components.
I'm literally I'm gonna write a Spectrum post. I've never done this before. I'm writing a Spectrum post.
So, when we come back to combat speeds and we go through the big rebalance of all the items in the game, you know, we're looking at, you know, what makes a difference between the items, you know, what makes a military component, and, you know, is it just, you know, is it stronger but it produces more heat, or it uses more energy, or is it weaker but you get a super long lifetime with this component, or, you know, does it give off a really big signal but you get really good power all the time and it's really strong, and you know, and it lasts forever. And there's all those factors we have to consider, and then we basically put them in a big pool, and then we look at the items and go, right, that item is this, and it should pull more towards this direction, because it's that item type, and that's the kind of future plan for items as we go through and add these, you know, and as you know, John said earlier, you know, the items have become much more important. And you know, as they become physicalized within the ships as well, you know, so where they are in the ship will matter. So that might affect your choices, you know, because if you've got a ship where the item is right on the edge and it's not very protected, you might want a strong component that can, you know, take more damage or take more distortion damage, you know, stuff like that. So we want all these factors to be a consideration when you're choosing the loadout of your ship, because it's a really important step when you get your ship. You go, right, what do I want that ship to be? Because it's got a purpose, obviously, but you can still customize that a little bit, you know, towards, you know, the goals you have for that ship. You know, if you want it to be a pure energy ship, you know, and fight distortion, you might pick a certain item type, you know, throughout the whole ship. So, you know, we do want to give players that choice.
Yeah, and one other thing specifically regarding shields that is missing from the current live game is shield emitters. So what everyone has at the moment is the shield generators, which is like, well, clues in the name, it generates your shield.
Sorry, I want to listen to this.
They sort of have a bit of the emitter functionality built into them at the moment, where like they dictate your shield faces, like a bubble shield, a front, back, a quadrant, whatever. But in the future, we want the shield emitters, which will be physicalized things on your ship. They are essentially the projectors for your faces, and that's going to be somewhat locked to your ship. You might have multiple emitters per face, like not going to say this is going to happen, but we'll use it as an example. A hammerhead might have multiple emitters for its front face, so it has that sort of layered redundancy in terms of, I can't just shoot one emitter to pieces and it brings down the front of this hammer. I've got to take them all out to do it, so it's not going to be a simple like one-to-one mapping, but that will be adding another layer of not customization, but sort of complexity to the ship. You might have two light fighters. They might have a different shield emitter set up out the box, so those, you could have the same generators on them and they give a different experience. So customizing these generators alters those two ships in different ways between the two of them. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on with shields.
Any news regarding the ability to spawn vehicles and snubs in or together with our larger ships?
It's definitely something we want to do. I've said this before. The people that were working on this unfortunately had to be reprioritized onto other things. It is a frustrating. You can do this now, but it involves you manually loading it yourself, and it usually, fingers crossed, stays between sessions. That will get much more reliable with persistent entity streaming. So hopefully you have to just do that once, and then for all your future play sessions, Like you've loaded your Carrack up with your Pisces and your Rover. That's it, done. You do that pain once, and you're good to go. But we definitely want to still have it there in either the ASOP or an equivalent terminal of.
Still want an interface for it.
Yes, we long term we don't want people to have to do the manual legwork of putting it all together. You should be able to choose it up front. Like, here's my 15th character that I've got in my account for whatever reason, and I want to have this rover and this snub ship in it. Bam, spawn it. As long as they're all at the same location, put them all in, put it on the landing pad.
Any plans or updates to the ballistic ammunition capacity changes? People are running out of bullets, Rich.
Yeah, so we're always evaluating the balance in terms of ballistics. We do recognize this was a massive change to the game, having limited ammo, but it was always the intention. Again, it's that kind of in development cycle. Like, it was always the intention to have limited ammo, because that's the trade-off with the ballistics. Is it's super powerful, but there's a limited amount. But then you've got your energy weapons, which last forever, but they're not as strong. So we're always evaluating it, and we were doing play tests this week, where we were changing the ammo of some weapons just to try it out.
Oh my god! I posted a Spectrum thread.
Yeah, it's always subject to change, but I can't give any guarantees whether what will change, because we've got a big step to move towards with the low combat speeds. Once we get to those low combat speeds, and then the bullets will be more accurate because you're at low speed, so more of those bullets are going to hit, so they're going to be more effective. And we just need to figure out where that kind of balance lies. And also, it's the lack of ability right now to restock, because you've got to go so far away back to kind of restock your ballistics and stuff like that. So, there's other choices we have.
John, we need to get that Vulcan in there.
We definitely want to have that ability to restock ammo, even if it's something as crude as, hey, I loaded 10,000 rounds of ammo in the back of my Cutlass.
Picard pump. I don't know if I linked it.
Go in the back, pick up a box, and EVA out to my ship and whack it on the Gatlings. That would make a huge difference to it. And yeah, like Rich says, ballistics are always going to be limited. That's a core design decision. How limited will change as we go, but definitely don't expect hundreds of thousands of rounds by default.
Something this person has always found confusing is escape pods. How are they going to be launched from ships? Even on newer ones at Gold Standard, they don't all seem to have an actual exit point from the hull, and some are quite far away from where the crew would actually be.
I hope all the newer ones have a marked escape point. A few of them are quite hidden, like they are very subtle, like POM line cutouts of where the panel is going to pop off, and they might not always go the way you think they are. Like just because they're on the upper floor of a ship, they might not be coming out the top. They might be all coming out the bottom just because of the way we've routed stuff inside. But they all do have a intended way out the ship, and sometimes some of our like suit lockers might look like escape pods, which might be confusing to people because they're the big vertical standing things. But it's usually the vertical standing escape pods, side like escape rafts, like you see in the 890 in Idris, where it's a hexagonal box that's the back on the Argo MPV, goes out the side, or might be ejection beds, like you see on the raft of Freelancer. But in terms of, hey, how do I get to them? Because my ship just explodes right now. Again, this is tied to physical damage, so I wouldn't expect escape pods to become a thing until that comes online, because until that point, we do have the whole sleeper. Hey, my ship has 10,000 health, it gets to 0, it goes bang. We don't have that finesse where we get to a point that, well, with physical damage, there isn't a health pool. So it's basically degrading your ship to the point it becomes non-functional, at which point then you go, hey, it's time to get off this ship. So you will have that grace period.
How can
which could
flight experience be a surprise?
It could be seconds, depending on if shots end up going into your power plant. But ideally, it's going to be multiple minutes, if not hours, where your ship is crippled, non-responsive, and you go, right, now is the time to get off this ship. So it's very much a future thing. It's planned in for the future, not for the current gameplay.
Yeah, the Star Trek ideal of everything blowing up in the bridge and running around and having to fix things is definitely something we've it's been in the dream of multi-crew gameplay for this game for a long time, and it's honestly what first drew me to the project back then. So when we talk about frustrations, one of mine is sitting and waiting patiently for multi-crew gameplay. So it is, yeah. All things in their time.
Mike is a red shirt.
Yeah,
I've always
regarding
liked
flight
playing
physics
support characters
on
and things like that.
Things like VTOL mode sort of lose meaning when you can just hover upside down or nose pointing at the ground. Why does it make flying easy, especially for things like the Prospector? While it does make flying easy, especially for things like the Prospector, it does break immersion. Are there any plans to force ships to stay close to horizontal at slow speeds? This would also affect ground combat and make it more necessary, as you wouldn't just be able to point straight down at targets.
This guy didn't know about hover mode.
So it's probably worth explaining. So at the moment, we have aero surfaces on these ships, but it doesn't fly like a plane. So they're still driven by the thrusters, but we do change them based on the planet they're on. So they do lose some power in atmosphere, but the thrusters to generate the performance in space have to be set in strengths. To generate the accelerations that we require in space. And then we fly in atmosphere, you lose some efficiency, but we still need the strength of the thrusters to be able to push the ship through the air. And actually pushing aero surfaces through the air takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. So we are limited in terms of, to get the maneuverability in atmosphere currently, we still need quite strong. Well, we still need quite strong thrusters, which means you can hover quite easily, but that's not always going to be the case. So in the future, we are going to move towards control surfaces, and this is going to allow us to move.
Who was expecting by now to have these in game? Raise your hand, because I definitely was. It's very interesting how difficult of a problem this high-speed combat thing has become for them. And it's really kind of pushing everything back.
With the movement of the ship from thrusters to aerodynamics. So it's going to be the aerodynamics driving the maneuverability of the ship in atmosphere. And then the thrusters are just going to help a little bit. They're going to help just move the ship and allow the thruster layouts to kind of do their work. But it's not going to be the primary source. So if you're flying a Gladius, for example, and you go really slow, it's just not going to have the power to kind of keep it up. And that's where the VTOL ship's going to come in, where they can transform and fly in VTOL and hover, and that's where they'll have the advantage. But we need to add control surfaces first and work out how we do all the controls with that as well, because it's quite a complex problem to solve. Without going full flight simulator, for example.
Right. Didn't we do some version of this before with adding the
old hover mode?
Yeah. All right.
To an extent, yes, but that sort of tried to solve the problem in a different way, and some people liked it, a lot of people didn't like it, and it was the right idea.
That liked it
with not
also
quite the
were
right
idiots.
Implementation. Another thing we can look at,
I'm sorry, it was so
all
bad.
the stuff Rich talked about is heat. We don't really use heat at the moment because the way heat works in our game is not how we want it to work long term, and this is something with a resource system that is being entirely redone.
Like you said, it was a good idea, bad implementation.
For ships like a Gladius, as well as needing that control surface to keep up in the air, like if you're not going fast, those thrusters can start overheating as a penalty, because in reality, you could just upend your Gladius like that and balance it on its main thrusters. But because they're powerful enough to do that, so they should be powerful enough to do that, but they're going to be working so hard that heat is going to build up, and we can cause intentional problems doing it that way to stop. I've seen people landing their Scorpiuses on the wings that way, and that sort of stuff will start being a lot more rare.
Like a Gunstar in Last Starfighter.
Yeah.
This person would like to know when we are getting better lights for the exterior of our ships.
Yes.
The Mole has forward-facing lights, which allow the pilot to see in front of the ship, but when you try to land on the dark side of a moon or planet, you cannot see below your ship. so you find yourself landing on large rocks or uneven terrain. Also, the players in the mining turrets are unable to mine rocks in the dark because mining turrets do not have lights on them, making it very hard to see the rocks below the ship.
Yep, so I'll start with the turret one first. There was a problem with turrets that didn't allow us to have lights on it back when the mole came out, and that's something we are actively fixing on the Reclaimer at the moment for supporting salvage, because it has a very similar problem. The pilot of the Reclaimer has the humongous floodlights for illuminating what's in front, but the little salvage turrets next to it aren't necessarily always going to be looking that way. So we've got some lights on those, and we're just working out the quirks with the system of, at the moment, they're all connecting to the same light controller, so the pilot can turn them all on and off, which is less than ideal for those in the turrets when the pilot decides he wants to turn his lights off and their lights turn off. But it's the goal to have them on, and then when that's working, we can go back to the mole. For the whole lights are too dim / too bright, that is a classic video game developer art design standoff that we've had for years, and probably every game studio has. Designers like, I want a light that can see 5 kilometers ahead of me, which means it has to be a certain brightness. Art go, that's too bright. It just blows out all the art. Everything is just bright white. It's a common complaint I see regarding paints as well on ships, in that in some lights they look completely different
Art
to in other lights.
continues to win in
It's a
this
similar
game.
problem with light
horrible.
intensity there. Things look good at certain light levels, things look bad at certain light levels. So design always want the brightest lights we can possibly get away with, so you don't crash into rocks. Art want things to look nice, which means nice balanced lights. And the way we're going to likely solve this is literally having a high beam and a low beam setting. So if you want nice big bright lights for flying super fast, you toggle your headlights into or Nord night vision. I know Todd is very keen on having some night vision. I am as well, but in terms of headlights, we do want that. Maybe not fully dynamic, but some control over the intensity.
Okay. Let's move on. After I can only troll the developers so much before they refuse to be on the show ever again. What are the plans for reintroducing cannons into dogfighting?
Are there? They're still in. I mean, you can technically dogfight with them at the moment.
Technically, but they're dog shit.
Technically, yeah.
Is technically what we're looking for here? Or?
Yeah, well, it's so again, it comes back to the big rebalance of weapons that we did. We tried to put in a specific purpose with size weapons and type of weapons, to give them kind of, reasons for choosing that weapon. Depending on your kind of purpose. If you want to destroy a light fighter, you want quick, sharp weapons. But if you want to destroy something like a medium to heavy starship, you need something more impactful, like a cannon, for example. So.
But only light fighters are part of the meta, so therefore cannons are useless. So yeah.
We are still learning lots with the weapon balance and how we can kind of redefine kind of the different styles of weapons we have in the game, and what it means for the different ships as well that you can fit these on, because you can have certain weapons that work well on a certain ship, because but then because for starters, and you can fit that weapon on pretty much every other ship as well. So if it's got the right loadout and stuff, so it's quite tricky getting the balance right. So but we'll start opening that up. As a pathway in the future.
Okay. Speaking of balance, why does CIG say they don't want a meta for ship balance, but they continue to nerf every ship outside of the Gladius Arrow?
Right,
Gladius and Arrow. They don't. Those are two different ships. It doesn't.
Well, I'm gonna go nerf the Gladius and the Arrow right now. But on a serious note, that's not our intention to look like we're just nerfing certain ships. But the balance of ships it's quite complex, because the way Star is everything we're trying to do right. We're trying to build ships that work as fully functional ships. And as and even the shape of the ship defines a large portion of how well that ship performs in combat. So we've got a ship like the Arrow, for example, which is seen as kind of an overperformer, but it's such a small ship, and its shape, which again goes back to the combat geometry at lower speeds. At the moment, with the combat.
So chat right now is saying how cannons are useful in combat, and it's down to pilot skill. Well, the person who asked this question is one of the most skilled pilots out of everybody in the entire game. So, chat, I'm still going to default to that person as if they're correct, and I haven't seen some of you prove yourself the way they have. So I don't know who to believe in this situation. Well, I do know who to believe in this situation for right now. But that's the thing, is it's going to be pretty subjective to you that something might be useful, but the sweatiest of the sweaty say that cannons aren't useful in PvP because they're, again, only flying light fighters, because that is by far the meta, which is kind of on topic with this discussion now. You know, I don't know what to say to you guys. You guys can continue to have your conversation all you want, but it's not just one guy, though. That's the thing. It's a collective. It's just one guy who asked the question, obviously, because you can't have a collective ask questions, you know? And Avenger 1 is one of those people, but I don't think he asked it. I think it was Easy One, and I think it was Easy One that asked this one, and he's like very legit. So,
you know, we kind of have really that kind of nose on nose where you're aiming at such a small part of the ship. We want to change. So
it wasn't a popular Twitch streamer.
So ships like the Arrow might actually lose some performance when we lower the speeds right down, because you'd be aiming more at the top and the bottom of the ship where there's more surface area. You know, but as far as not wanting meta, we just want all ships to, because all ships have a purpose, and then we've got like a window where that ship operates. But I wouldn't say we're ever tying that ship specifically to that kind of meta, and that's kind of what we mean. We're not, you know. We can have a ship that is defined as a light fighter, but it doesn't mean we're just going to go, oh, well, it's
both.
Well, it's a light fighter. We give it 50 points here, 50 points here, 50 points here, because it's
You're
a light
not going
fighter.
to win this one,
and that's basically what we mean. And then that doesn't generate a meta. We want all these different factors that Starter provides with its ships to kind of matter in different ways. And it's how all those different ways come together. And you know, and as I said before, it's a continuously moving target as well. So it's a challenge to keep right.
Yeah, whoever asked that question must have forgotten about the time where we removed half the Arrow's shield generators to bring about. It was never supposed to have two. It was only supposed to have one, but it had two for over a year.
Yeah.
And there was a big outcry when we corrected that back to where it was supposed to be.
So it went from being the best, the really best, to just the best.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's even the best. It's certainly a strong choice, but there's definitely no there's no protected ships in Star Citizen that get special treatment over the others. If something is way outside of its
the Gladius is absolutely a special ship. I don't know if it gets protected, but it's like the Squadron 42 ship, so it always gets everything first, right? It's special.
Intended range, it will get looked at and sorted out one way or the other.
Okay. I won't argue with you. I won't argue. There comes a time where you've been killed by Vinny Sinatra and his arrow so many times you can't. It's hard. You have to be like, no, it's the arrow. It's not me. I'm not the one who's just so bad.
No, it's him. It's not the arrow. It's him.
Yeah, no, it is. It's his skill, because I'm pretty sure he could do it in any ship. He just prefers the arrow. We've been talking a lot about reducing the speeds and stuff for combat. What about racing? Any racing support that we can look forward to?
Talk to me, baby. I really want to get back into racing, like
maybe
really
a racing
bad.
Flight mode or something that turns off all the weapons and missiles and just lets us race or something. I don't know.
That's probably more one for the Rini Commander feature team. I know they are at the moment looking into a few racing specific things, but that's not really our wheelhouse to divulge their
But how the ships fly are your wheelhouse, dude. Sorry.
information.
Are you kidding me?
It's definitely being looked at. We don't want to. The lowering of combat speeds is not really going to remove racing from the equation. I know there's a very, let's say small. There's a dedicated fan base for it that we don't want to exclude from the game.
Okay.
Fair. Anything you can tell us about the store box for the Aurora?
Literally dodged that one.
It's a
What
box.
the fuck?
It's I use this as a get out clause all the time, but it is genuinely true. Cargo refactor will make it be a thing. I'm not going to promise it's going to come with the patch that the cargo refactor comes in, because there are some asset requirements to adjust it, but we will not be blocked from making it be a thing at that point.
Okay. For vehicles with snubcraft, will there be improvements to relocating the parent ship from the snub after navigating to a planet's surface and back? At the moment, once you reach a certain distance from your cap ship, it becomes impossible to relocate.
Yeah, I think I'm not
Transponders
entirely sure what the specific issue there is, but it is something we are aware of. I think you just lose the marker, which is a bug, because you have your last known ship marker, which naturally, when you get in your snub ship, is the ship you're in. So you then lose the marker for the constellation, and that's something we want to fix in the future. But that's less vehicle team, more UI feature that the new star map will help with that. The new marker system will help with that.
Okay.
Being able to pin things on the
I think also things like persistence and server meshing help with things like that too, because I know that like there's issues with our bodies and why they may not be there when we come back and things like that because of the way like object containers are streamed in and out. Like yeah, so there's a lot of like big scale Star Citizen problems that you don't have in other games that Star Citizen does, and this is definitely one of those.
Star map go, even if you don't see your ship, but you go, hey, I'd left my ship here, bam, you can send that to your friends, whatever.
Yeah.
Being able to mark locations will be a big help.
Ooh.
Okay.
He just implied marking locations is going to be a thing.
Player-facing ship modularity? Question mark.
Yep, still planned. Again, like the answer I gave earlier, the people working on it were reprioritized onto other squadron work. So no progress since I last talked about it. It's still planned.
Everybody has been moved to squadron.
Still going to
literally everyone.
People think I have a secret vendetta to cut player-facing modularity from the game. That is absolutely not the case. It's something we want to do. But there is a place in Star Citizen for both modularity on ships and baked variants. They're not just one or the other.
Sure, of course.
Will ground refuel vehicles be a thing?
Yes.
Why not?
These are all the people that want that one fuel tanker that was in the background of the Vulcan concept. I know Paul Jones really wants to make it happen. Because spaceships run out of fuel and you can get Starfarer to come refuel you. Ground vehicles currently don't use fuel, but we want them to use fuel in the future.
Okay.
So then, naturally,
why not?
That will need to be a thing, because if I can only dread people trying to refuel like a little ground vehicle with a Starfarer planet side, it's not the best application of tools to fix the job.
And how about boats?
Would love to do some boats. We've got the tech to do it right now. I'm not going to say why, but for the PU, like a lot of our vehicles and ships now, we want to deliver them alongside the gameplay. And at the moment, there is no gameplay for having boats, and there isn't really enough environmental locations to even have them. Like Hurston has some water on it. I think a couple of the other moons have some water. We've got the river. But there's not enough to justify boat gameplay at the moment. Today, right now. Absolutely in the future.
All right.
Absolutely
we're about
in the
3/4 of
future.
the way through. You ready to hit some chip status update questions?
No dates.
It's as always when we do these, a big chunk of the questions are just some variation of where is my ship or where is this ship and whatnot. So
I should get some little paddles of no, yes.
All right, so we'll group these up here at the end here. What is the status of the RSI Polaris? Last we heard it got a bigger hangar. Last we heard was that it got a standard hangar, weapons component upgrade, and interior pass.
You heard correct. I think I said that, and that is still true.
I don't know who else would have said that.
It had a full reconcept. Well, not full, quite a hefty one, mostly on the internals. It grew a bit. I can't remember the number off my head, but it grew a little bit longer. Not Foundry 42 doubling size like we used to. The big thing is the hangar is a standard metric size. I can't remember what one it is, but it's the closest one to whatever it was, just not bespoke anymore. So it was this weird trapezoidal hangar, and it still is, but the area inside it is the metric for, I'm going to say extra small, which extra small internally is, I think, small backer facing. So all your standard fighters will fit in it. No more theory crafting and Reddit images of here's the top images of these ships, which will fit. Components got a little buff up as well. And the interior, I don't think it ever had a docking collar on it. It now has the proper size docking collar on it.
So from the player perspective, the small hangars that they can land fighters and stuff in, that's what it's got now. So if it fits in a small hangar,
they're like the Gladius, the Saber, because internally we have, confusingly, a numerical size 0 to 5.
What, you start counting with 0?
Yeah. Only in this instance. Save your rants for later.
Derailing. All right, but and then concept changes are to the interior, which mostly hasn't been seen or shown much anyway. Stuff that the backers are familiar with. I mean, it still looks like the Polaris.
Yep, still a big flying Dorito. Externally, you probably, unless you had the old one next to it, you wouldn't notice any difference visually, aside from being like maybe 5% longer.
And for folks, the immediate question is, well, when are you going to show us the updated interiors?
When you ask very nicely.
No.
On Jared's Twitter account.
No. Let's say without making a promise that I am not empowered to keep.
And him troll each other so much, dude.
Idea around IAE and see if that seems like an appropriate time to do this again, because John may seem literally dead inside, but I think he's actually really fucking funny, man. I think he's funny. That's the next big thing after Fleet Week. So we'll see if we can't do a little segment on the new Polaris interior, on the concept interiors. Then it's not saying it's going to happen. It's saying we're going to try.
Not going to lie, John seems like he kind of resents the Star Citizen community a bit.
What is the status of the 600i gold standard pass?
The fuck?
So
we're literally the worst.
Again, it's had a concept repass on it. Externally, very similar. It has a docking collar, which is like the big ticket exterior change. Internally, though, it's been quite a major rework. It still has a lot of the same feel about
it. Who here
it.
Kept his job for 10 years? Okay. This is where I put my fucking foot down, all right? This is where I put my foot down. And I feel like I've said this before, too. We cannot talk like that, all right? Because I work in a business that is very similar to this, where because somebody tips me a fucking $1, they think that they can treat me a certain way, okay? Because you pay his salary does not mean that you could treat him a certain way. Shut the fuck up. Never talk like that again. It is not okay, okay? That is not an okay way to treat people. Ever. You cannot hold the fact that you pay their salary over somebody's head. That's not fair. It's never been fair. Don't do that. All right? I know it was just like a casual comment in chat. It was probably just a meme. It's not that big of a deal. But I want to make sure that people understand that you cannot hold that over somebody's head. Like, yeah, he said I didn't get it in chat. But regardless, I think making that point's really important. You cannot hold that shit over people's head. It's terrible.
More sensible layout. There's a lot less up and down to get places. The big ticket thing is the modular room is no longer in the middle. It's at the rear. So everything that was in the rear is sort of moved into the middle. So all your crew habitation and engineering is all there. So the front 2/3 of the ship internally stays the same between the modules, and then it's the back that changes. So on the exploration one, the touring one's a better one. So that in the current version we have that back room with a big panoramic window that suits the touring one better, and then exploration has all the exploration stuff in the back there as well.
How about the Aegis Retaliator gold standard?
That got paused again. The resources on it needed to be done on somewhere else.
The Gladiator gold standard got paused.
What we showed last time,
that's surprising,
with the updated central room ship, with the docking collar on the side and the bigger lift on the other side, no infinite drop hole through the top and bottom of the ship. That's where we pretty much left it. We'd widened all the corridors so AI can successfully navigate around it.
Excuse me, Retaliator.
Tight.
But still.
What's left is the cockpit dashboard needs bringing up to current standards. It's a bit old school, both in terms of visuals and setup. So the work we've done for the Gladius will sort of get transplanted and upgraded into the Retaliator, and then we need to make the exterior match up with all the interior changes, because those corridors have got wider. They don't stick out the hull, but it leaves very little room, so she'll get a little thicker in places, but not massively. And of course, docking collar needs to go on the side, which will necessitate the wing thrusters moving a little.
We showed that in a sprint report some time ago.
Yeah.
With the Starfarer now having the ability to refuel, what is the timeline we're looking at for the one question we're looking at for the interior remodeling in Gold Pass on this amazing space whale?
Not going to answer a when question, but I will say that we absolutely are going to redo the interior of that thing. It had some reasons I can't go into why we couldn't do it, but we now can do it.
Okay, that's
given the green light to do that. So I think some aspects of it will stay as it is, like the cockpit and the section behind that in the neck and the chin area, that will stay the same. The cargo area will stay the same, but outside of that, it's probably going to get a whole refresh, because it's just not that good to negotiate around.
It was your first
one of our earliest ships with an interior. We were still figuring this stuff out.
It's no big deal.
There's what we've learned over the years from experience and from player feedback could fill a book all by itself.
Yeah.
What is the current direction you're looking to go for both the Ares models?
Ares question. Oh no.
It's presumably to do with the.
Oh no. This is going to be a Pepe laugh moment, I feel like. Here we go. This is where they say something about the Ares and everybody clips it. Here we go. You said they fucked up the question bad. Let's hear the question again.
Book all by itself. What is the current direction you're looking to go for both the Ares models?
Okay, what direction?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
It's presumably to do with the.
Bro, how can you not understand the question after the complete drama that went on for like a month and a half with this thing?
The weapons. I would imagine this is a why did you break my ion?
Yes.
Question in disguise.
I would have understood that question.
Okay, well, I
why
mean,
did you break my ion?
That is what they asked. What direction are you going with it forward, right? Hey, they've talked about that they want to. They're still working on it. It's not dead yet. They're trying to revive it. They're going like this and they're blowing in its mouth or whatever. You know, they're trying to resuscitate it.
On the spot, Rich. Why did you do it personally?
Yeah. Well, the reason why I did it, well, it's just because of balance. It's because of where it fitted in the game with the kind of current kind of energy in the weapons we have. We basically had to fit it within what worked for the game now. And as I said earlier, the game now is different to what the game's going to be in the future.
Okay.
And we've been prototyping kind of different weapon solutions, especially for the iron, where we want to make that weapon feel much more impactful. Because, it's a big weapon. I want the reason why, it's got that purpose to it. And we can't quite deliver that with the current weapon system, and it requires some changes to the kind of core tech behind the weapons for it to work properly. So once we have that figured out, they want a
charge mechanic. So in case, I have a funny feeling they're not even going to say it, but they want a charge mechanic. Yogi posted it on Spectrum.
We'll definitely be revisiting that ship. And then on the ballistic side again,
yeah, he didn't even mention it.
Depends where we go with the ballistics. But also we, as I said before, we kind of see that ship benefiting from the ability to kind of restock, much easier than he can now.
I think a lot of we tried a few things in PTU and Ivacati. Some worked, some didn't work, but a lot of people only really saw the PTU changes, and a lot of the why don't they do X and why don't they do Y? It would make it so much better. We'd already tried even before Ivacati, and it wasn't working. So what we have now is, like Rich says, it's what works for the game right now. It's not that it's going to stay like that. It will.
The thing is like it works for the game right now. No one's going to use it because it doesn't work in the current meta right now.
Change, but where it's going to change to, we don't really want to commit to.
Weird.
A lot of people said like, oh, it's a big gun. If people stand in front of it, they deserve to die in one shot. And yes, that is true to an extent.
Yeah, it's still good to farm big ships.
A lot of what we saw
fills its role,
in
I
both
guess.
Feedback, watching people play it internally and externally, and the analytics was not people standing in front of it and getting one-shotted. It was almost being like abusive to the point of how it was being used in combat.
Absolutely.
So we had to do something quite radical to nerf that, to give us the time to look at other things.
I don't know how anyone can argue that should have stayed the same.
Uproar about it. It is still a pretty good combat ship. Just been slightly hammered by various factors.
Send your letters to John Crew, care of Freedom House, Church Street, Wilmslow, SK,
or his Twitter account.
Or postcodes. Come on.
I don't remember the postcode. Last ship update. Constellation is getting a little old in the tooth compared to a lot of the other ships. It's one of Star Citizen's signature ships. Any joy? Anything you can tell us?
It's sad that
what I'm
that's
hearing
a
is people
ship.
love struts and they want more struts in the cockpit to obscure view. Like gold standard on all the other ships. When we get to the Constellation, a big thing for it will be putting the components in. That people will see there are component bays in there already. They were done a long time ago. Components have changed in how they are used, the quantities, even some of the sizes of them, which shows you how old it is. I think somewhere it says it's got 2 quantum drives if you go look at all the hatches in there. So we'll be going through and ripping all those out, putting proper ones in, which will necessitate other interior changes. So we'll collect everything up in one big pass and do a big pass across the interior. Not going to say it's going to look wildly different. It's got a very key art style that we want to keep. We do want to do something about the struts on the bridge.
Really?
We had planned to do that with the Taurus, but instead what we've done is we spent the extra time we had available to us on the pilot seat, which is why you see it has all the buttons and flip up holo displays now, which benefits all of them.
Okay.
We'd hoped we could reduce some of those struts in the forward view. At the same time, we just sadly didn't have time. And that would have only fixed 2 or 3 out of the variants. We wouldn't have time to do the killer as well. So when we get to gold standard, we'll sort them all out. So they're all have a good view out the front. It's still going to have struts.
Man, it feels like gold standard work
the Carrack has struts,
longer.
but we'll try and get rid of those particularly annoying ones that are through the center view.
Then I would hope.
Only 2 questions left.
Which one are you going to choose, Jared?
With a hard one at the end here.
Sounds like only 1 question left.
Why do some ships get prioritized over others?
That's not a bad question.
There are some ships
that's a very important question.
Like the currently being built Banner Merchantman since 2013.
This is another thing you could write a book on. There is no one answer that applies to every ship. It is a combination of the resources we have at the time. If you take, if I could click my fingers now, put the Polaris into production, that would take out a big chunk of the UK team for maybe 12, 18 months, which means we can't deliver a constant flow of other vehicles in patches. So you could go multiple patches without any vehicle release.
And this is why I don't buy big ships anymore. That's ridiculous, man. Spend hundreds of dollars on these things. And like you can't make them in time. And I'm not saying that like they're incompetent or anything. It is what it is. But that's why like every time, and I think that they've realized that as well, because if you haven't noticed, I don't think there's like really massive ships that are coming. Like was there a massive ship at Invictus this year? What was the massive ship at CitizenCon? They're like more becoming variants of others, because I think that they realize that if they continue to make huge ships, the Liberator, but it's like simple, right? Oh, the Odyssey. Yeah, you know what? They're still doing it. Yeah, they're literally still doing it. Never mind. I take it back. Because the Odyssey is actually... The Liberator seems simple, but the Odyssey isn't. And yeah, like, that's kind of insane to think that if you can only make 1 to 1.5... Like, 1 every 1.5 years, when are any of us going to get the things that we paid for? It's like not okay, you know, like that's not okay to do. But yeah, I guess the Liberator's not that big. It's just like 3 prospectors long, right? But yeah, dude, that's tough. That's tough for me. To be like, you know, oh, well, this is just how it is. And like it is just how it is, but I think the big ships have to stop getting sold for a while. I think that's just where we have to go, and they got to catch up. I have absolutely no issue with them making the Drake Mule or the Anvil Liberator or any smaller ship. I really don't. But these big ones, like what he just said there, just says like how big of a problem that is, you know?
Or any support for other features coming out. So we have to balance that across not just delivering vehicles, but supporting the other teams. Or the last few years, we've been trying to not push vehicles out without their gameplay. That's
taking money away from
so things like the Crucible. We could make the Crucible now, but we don't really want it floating around without the repair gameplay to go alongside. So whilst I can control the production of the vehicle, I have to rely and work with other directors to get their side delivered alongside it. And the problems that affect me of, hey, we've changed our minds for IE, we want to do this instead, also affects them for other things. Like the feature they're working on now might be delayed for another team, which delays the feature I need for this vehicle. So we chop and change a lot. And then also, if you have artists especially, hey, you're working on this big ship for 18 months. you don't want to put them on another big ship for 18 months afterwards. You want to break that and give them, hey, here's a nice little snub ship to do. So that's why you might see like a random ground vehicle come out from nowhere, because they are much quicker relatively to do, and gives those people a nice like palette refresh of what they're doing. So yeah, we're not actively ignoring the older ships. A lot of them have gameplay consequences and gameplay requirements that I don't have an answer of when they will come online, so I can't plan developing those ships at that point.
And not for nothing, the larger ships. I mentioned the Banner Merchantman in 2013, but there's also the Idris from 2012 and stuff like this. Multi-crew gameplay and resource management. I mean, even if we could make an Idris right now, I mean, because most of it's part of Squadron 42 and stuff like this, and put it out there, it'd just be like driving around in a giant canoe. I mean, it's like you need the multi-crew gameplay, you need the resource management in order to have a capital ship experience. To put it out right now would be disappointing in more than one way. Yeah. I know people want to have it. They want to see it. They want to walk around. They want to walk around and take all the pictures and everything. And then after you're done with that for the first 8 hours, you go, well, now I want to do something with it. Yeah, it's a very big gladius, and that's not what we want to. That's not what we want that experience to be.
Yeah.
All right, last question. What's the one ship you haven't added to Star Citizen that's still on your list?
Oh, like the
for
type
me,
of ship.
it's a big round donut style, like classic alien UFO ship. Don't know what gameplay. Just want that visual of that big round flying saucer.
We almost had an Argo.
I know we did. I am
they
very
almost had an Argo that looked like that.
One of the untold tales. We almost had an Argo donut ship at one point. How about you, Rich?
I'd like to see a big silly racing ship.
A big silly racing ship.
What makes it big and silly?
Yeah.
Massive thrusters, like that's
like
on
a
the Herald,
drag
for example. I'd like a racing ship like that.
Okay. I still
for
want
no reason at all.
I still want my jalopy.
Another one I want is a humongous ground vehicle. We have a metric for large ground vehicles, and the Nova and Blister are technically medium, to give you an idea of how big this large one would be. It'd be like a multi-story ground vehicle.
The Rolling Thunder.
Yeah. Be pretty cool.
All right. Rich, John, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
No problem.
Again, for those who are watching, apologies that we couldn't do it live. Anytime there's this giant, enormous conflux of holidays, it forces alterations to schedules. People have to get things prepared for other people who aren't going to be around and stuff. And just trying to do this on Friday was too problematic. So here we are. As always, it says pre-recorded and everywhere, so you don't have to wonder. It is. Invictus is still going on right now. Be sure you check out ISC yesterday with our look at the Mole and the Scorpius. Next week on ISC, we're back in the 7th floor of the Manchester Goodyard building and talking about big mission changes coming to Alpha 317.2. So you want to check that out.
Is it big mission changes, or again, Rich, is it just the one mission?
John, Jared, take care. Bye. Oh, and no, I don't think we're doing a Star Citizen Live tomorrow or next week because it's a holiday here. It's the Queen's Jubilee, and I'm a loyal subject of the UK now.
Her Majesty. I should come around your house if you don't take the day off.
Apparently. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I feel like it's just the one mission, but it is a big change. So, all right, well, that was pretty good. That last one really got me, man, with the big ships. Yikes. But all right, everybody. That was our first watching of SCL live on stream in a very long time. Nice.